Dr. Cohn's famous words, you must find your voice.
Gotta find your voice.
Well, doing this work, the experiences up until this point,
Yeah.
what's your voice telling you, man? What's the message you want to give out to the family out there,
That
man?
Jesus was a Black Panther.
Oh.
Whatever you heard of me ain't worthy to me. I'm just too cutthroat, verbal surgery. How you claim to know thyself when your shelf's too high? I keep mine's at eye level. What you trying to hide?
Peace, 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 beautiful family. This is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and this is the Know Thyself podcast. The Know Thyself podcast utilizes the metaphor of the shelf in order to extrapolate the self. And the way we do that is we invite guests to come in and share something about themselves. And before I introduce my guests, as we always do, actually, let me pause for a second and give a moment of silence for my grandma. Just buried her. Shout out to Mama Linda. I'm gonna give about 5 seconds of a moment of silence. Shout out to all the wizards, the shamans, our ancestors, you know what I'm saying? Because I think that's why it's a beautiful thing that I'm here with family, because God always comes at the right time, you know what I mean? It's always the Kairos moment, as we say. So as we always do, we shout out. I want to give a few shout outs to some people we're rocking with, some sponsors. I want to give a shout out to my brother Steve in the 2020 collections. Definitely holla at the merch that he got. Shout out to my brother Zanuj, who makes the jewelry that I got on right here. Okay. You know, super dope. And if you're looking for any coaching, any speaking engagements, holla at me or holla at my brother. Real talk. Just because, that's pretty much the same line of journey that him and I both take. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, just shoot me an email at knowthyselftv@gmail.com. And we can talk specifics. The other thing that we always do is we like to give a shout out to a group of individuals. And today I want to give a big shout out to all the theologians.
Yeah.
All the educators.
Yeah.
I hate this term, but just for the sake of, I want to say it because it's just for empowerment. But shout out to all my young, black, strong, conscious men out there, because we don't hear enough of that. You feel me? So I want to be very specific and shout those individuals out, because today I got someone that I love, that I respect, that I admire, and that I'm so proud of. My brother, Dr. Joshua.
Hey, God bless you, man.
Just like that, King.
Dope intro.
Just like that.
You, man.
Yeah. You're ready. Man.
Thank you for this opportunity, man.
You're ready, King.
It's a real honor to be here.
Yeah.
I've been seeing you working, man, doing your thing for some time now, and I've always been wondering, when are we gonna meet up again so that we can have some time like this? I was in Denver for a little while.
Fact. Shout out to Denver.
I know you were in New York doing your thing.
And that's where we met and
that's
built.
Where we met, you know what I'm saying?
In the Mecca.
Theological. Mm-hmm. So it's just a blessing to be back together with you now, man, in this space as you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
As we are doing our thing.
That's
because
right.
you feel me?
Yep.
So because I'm this is what I'm talking about, family, right here. So let's get started. As I always do, I like to contextualize stuff. And put stuff into this framework. So let's do it like this. I always say, have you ever seen the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures?
Ooh, if I did,
Throwback.
It was a long time.
Yeah, right? But at the end of the day, even Back to the Future, right? If we were to go and jump into a time machine, where would we go to if we were to go back to a younger Joshua? What would we see? What would we hear? Because you're originally from
Trinidad and Tobago.
Shout out to Trinidad. Oh, I was there a few years ago. Beautiful, man. And yo, shout out to Chromatics, MC out of Trinidad, who showed me around while I was out there. Amazing people, yo, dope.
From Trinidad, man, I grew up here in Roxbury, Boston, Massachusetts.
Shout out to the Beantown, and that's where we at,
That's exactly
live
where
and
we're at
direct.
right now.
Yep.
We're actually in the church that baptized me
Yes.
when I was a little boy. And you know, after high school, growing up in Boston, I spent some time in New York, in the Bronx, and then Fordham. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Went to Union Theological Seminary where we met in Harlem, and then went straight into my PhD, bro. I moved out to Denver. You know, moved back to Boston in 2017, and I've been here. I've been back home ever since.
Talk to me about how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
I was 2 years old.
Wow, you were
2
super
years
young.
old. Yeah.
Super
Yeah,
young.
yeah.
Any fond memories? Do you have any memories
man,
of the Twin Islands?
I remember coming here with my pops and my sister. You know, we came in sections, my family. You know, my mom
Like
came
mine.
first, and then you know, she sent for everybody else. Memories of the island are really faint, man. You know, I was such a young kid. You know, I remember things like going to school, crying when the school bus came to pick me up, because I probably had separation anxiety as a little boy. You know what I'm saying? Just little things like that, man. But nothing too vivid. Nothing too vivid. You know, maybe the next door neighbor I used to play around with as a kid. But that's it. You know, most of my memories started here when I started growing up in Roxbury.
And you know, see, the thing is, shout out to the Beantown, yo. Because I think you forget. I went to school out here. Shout out to Northeastern University.
Oh, you did?
Right? Yo, shout out to all
That's
my
right.
Mass family. I was driving
You a
up
hustler,
here,
man.
you know what I mean? And there's so many memories that flooded out here. And let me tell you something, man. I sometimes, and I'm going to say this, I think I've said it before, man. One of my biggest concerns with Boston is, you know, it's super racist. Super.
Yeah, Boston.
You know, and shout out to
Boston has
Benzino.
perfected racism.
Yeah, and you know, I just keep it all the way a buck with this
Yeah.
one, because, and shout out to Benzino, because when they interviewed him, Queen's Flip, I think it was, and go watch that interview, family, because he breaks it down perfectly. And I just say that because at the same time, this is the home of the revolution, abolitionists. Malcolm X spent
Malcolm
time
X
here, yo.
did.
A lot of people don't know that. Even
live in a house.
Farrakhan
You
is
live
from
in a house right
Superfacts, yes.
about 2 blocks
Correct.
away.
I seen it, and you know, I
Farrakhan grew
bumped
up here,
yes,
right, yep.
and I bumped into that crib while I was at school. I think we hopped out the car, and someone had to do something that I'm not gonna say, and then I walked into it, and I saw the plaque.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
God
right,
brought
that's
me
right.
there, man.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, yo, this is
It's right in the front
holy
lawn.
ground right now.
Yeah.
So, anyways, talk to us about growing up in the Beantown, because
Yeah,
I don't
man.
think people
Yeah.
understand what
That's real.
the specialness of this place.
That
you know?
is real, man. I appreciate that question. You know, I didn't really understand the significance of growing up in Boston until I lived somewhere else and started hearing about how racist Boston was. And you know, growing up in it, you see it all around you. You don't understand it because you have nothing to compare it to. But you know, my experience was interesting in that I grew up here in Roxbury, but my parents put me in private school, and that's really where you get to see the racism at play. That's where you get to kind of see how racism is applied in Boston. Because I mean, Dorchester's not far from Roxbury, which is where I went to school.
Shout out to Dorchester
Shout
too.
out to Dorchester. But in terms of quality of education, man, you know, going to those private Catholic schools in Dorchester, even in Roxbury, really sets you apart, you know, from the public school system and what they have to offer.
Like super redlining. Like we talk about redlining, just go to the schools, yo.
And it became very apparent when it came time to start applying to not just high schools, man, but college. You know what I'm saying? And then seeing, you know, who in your friends group were ready to take those steps. You know, we're ready to start thinking about beyond high school and you know, dreaming about the future, what we wanted to become. You know, once those became real questions that we had to answer, you begin to really see how our education system here in Boston was really set up along the lines of race. Economically speaking, you know what I mean? It was set up along the lines of race. So if you had bread, you could go to these private schools. If you didn't, man, you had to really figure it out. You know what I'm saying? But I'm blessed, man, because I had really loving parents who invested in my education and created a way for me to see what else was out here. You know, so I didn't get stuck in Roxbury because I didn't have the support of a good education. You know? But I would say, man, that's the biggest way racism stands out here. Who gets a good education and who doesn't, and why? You know, who can afford to pay for that private school system? Who gets sort of, left to fend for themselves, man, in the public school system? You see it all the time. And I had friends who were trying to make it out. Parents that really began to get hip to what was going on, and they tried to put their kids into prep schools and different types of schools. Using all types of different advantages that their kids had. Whether it be athletics, sports, basketball, whatever. And that comes with its own sort of racism. You know what I mean? Right. So it was tough, man. It was tough. It was tough. Everything out here is de facto segregation. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have the resources, you got to go out somewhere else to get them.
And it's crazy because I think that's why the GOD brought you and I together via Union, because our stories are like so much similar. Our parents coming here from Guatemala and Central America, and them working their butt off. And I went to Catholic school all the way up until high school. I made the decision to go to public school, which I semi-regret later, but I still was able. I was in a college magnet program. Okay. So I was able to kind of I had really great teachers and all that. But I always talk, particularly to family that comes from the hood and quote unquote black and brown people, because I hate these terms and all that stuff, man, because but anyways, it's just I want to know from you more than anything, where's this drive come from? Well, you could have gone a different route. I always feel like, because I tell people I suffer from survivor's guilt, because growing up in the hood, I've seen a lot stuff too early, and I've seen a lot of people make bad decisions, and I sort of did, and I always feel like it's like you mentioned, it's like a filter system, the education system, and only a few made it. Right. How'd you make it, man?
Yeah, man. I honestly think, man, it was just the basics, bro, of having a strong family background. I just had support from really loving parents, man. I look at what my father did literally every day, man. This dude woke up, work. Simple as that. You just go to work, come home every day, from the time I've known him till now. The man never took a break. My mother was the same way. It's funny. We moved here, and both my parents, me and my siblings. It was a total of 7 of us. We actually lived in a room in a house right across the street from this church. All of us lived in that one room. And coming from Trinidad, we had a life in Trinidad. You know what I'm saying? We had land, we had property, we even had a housekeeper. We had things. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We came here, had to start all over. And my father actually didn't get started first. My mother was the one who would leave the house 5 a.m. every morning, come home midnight every day, wake up, do it again, until my father was able to get a job, and then we moved out the room, bought a 2-bedroom apartment, eventually worked our way up into a house. You know what I'm saying? I know this is not the typical story. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to pump some American dream.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, being able to see my parents grind and not take breaks. I internalized that at a young age. I didn't know anything different. You know what I'm saying? For me, that was life. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to work, but you're supposed to work for what you want and for the things you need. You gotta take care of your family. You gotta take care of yourself, and really, you don't got an option not to. So that's just where it came from with me. A lot of the things I started doing to make different connections in my environment came from just my own unique experiences. You know what I'm saying? Going across the across the road to Dorchester, coming back to Roxbury, seeing, you know, different races interacting, different contexts for racial interaction, whether it be private school or I'm just on the block in Roxbury, and just putting all these little things together. You know what I'm saying? Trying to figure out why are things different? Why does that matter? Faith, religion, all these things were always a part of my life. You know, my father would take us here to this church. But I went to a Catholic school, so we would go to mass, even noticing differences there. You know, here we talking about social justice. You know, here we talking about politics. We talking about being black. I didn't get that at the private school. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, just putting all this stuff together and growing up.
Yes.
And knowing I had to make something of myself eventually, but also thinking critically about what that really meant and what that would be. I think that's where all the motivation came from, man. You know, just observing my parents and internalizing that work ethic.
I always tell, pretty much anyone, but when we talk about faith, when we talk about theology and all this stuff, I always tell people that Walter Hidalgo, Walter Hidalgo, right? Before Union Theological Seminary, and the Walter Hidalgo after Union Theological Seminary, two different, two completely, like, I don't know. I don't even have words. So I asked this to the guy Derek McQueen. Shout out to my brother, Dr. Minister Rev, right? All that great stuff.
Right.
It's a special calling.
Yeah, it is. Man, you know, how do I put this into words, man? The more I reflect on my union experience, the more I'm like, what in the world was that? You know, there were so many things that happened that you cannot replicate ever again. No matter how hard you try, no matter who you talk to, no matter what resources you think you have. You know, I went to Union. Like you said, it's a special call. It's a special call. And to be honest with you, I know exactly why I went. But I didn't understand what it meant, nor did I really understand the gravity of what was happening in my life. You know what I'm saying? And I say that because I stumbled into it. You know, I was in college. I'm thinking about next steps. I was a psych major, but you know, getting back to that critical thinking piece where race is always on my mind. I'm always trying to figure out why are these differences so impactful, because they were for me, you know, along racial lines and cultural lines and even economic lines. And I knew I wanted to talk about these things in whatever I chose to do for my profession or my, you know, career or whatever. Psychology, I didn't feel was a straight line to those conversations. You know what I'm saying? I was a theology minor, but that was honestly just because, you know, I just like the way I feel when I pray and I believe God loves me back. You know what I'm saying? Just real basic. Now, I didn't know how I was gonna make a living for myself or figure out next steps, right? Then I called my dad. I was on Fordham Road in front of the White Castle, having a whole breakdown, trying to figure out what am I gonna do with my life, right? Call my dad. I'm like, yo, man, I got friends. They don't care at all about racism. They don't care about social justice at all. They don't care about none of the stuff that I came into school, you know, thinking about. Joining black student unions and doing all this stuff, trying to, you know. But I'm like, they getting jobs. They about to graduate. They got stuff lined up. What about me though? My dad was like, come home, son. You know, went home. James Cone was on TV one day, and he was like, yo, you ever heard of this dude right here? I start listening to James Cone. I look at my dad. I see how engaged my dad is, right? Like just track the beat, just tunnel vision on what dude was saying. I start listening to it. I began to feel like, you know what? This dude is speaking everything I've ever felt about my passion for racial justice about the way I looked at my faith and the differences of my experiences in church, whether it be in a Catholic school or, you know, here at 12th Baptist. And I'm like, but what is he though? I didn't know what a theologian was. I didn't understand, you know, what these things really were. I just heard about black theology. It sounded interesting. I applied to Union, bro. You know what I'm saying? Just believing it's a way for me to figure things out. You know what I'm saying? And he was there. He was there for the 3 years, man. You know, you can't make this stuff up. I applied to Union, got in, didn't know what I was doing. You know, I think I applied to Union and NYTS. got into NYTS.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm about to go to NYTS. Then I got into Union. I think somebody said, no, you should go to Union. That's what James Cone is. I said, I'm going to go there. End up, you know, studying with dude for 3 years. Then I began to learn all the things about what a degree in theology means. You know what I'm saying? I switched from a Master of Arts in Theology to a Master of Divinity. You know, I linked up with people who were tremendous resources, man, in terms of, you know, guiding me in the direction of what I began to understand I wanted to do, which was be like Cone, but really, you know, just become a professor, teach, you know what I'm saying? Learn more about all the stuff that I heard him talk about on TV that one time, you know what I'm saying? And just expand my own self and become all the things that like set me on fire from what he was talking about. You know, I met the Ebony Marshall Termans. Well, she was Ebony Marshall at the time.
Shout out
you know
to Doctor.
At the time, Dr. Cornell West was there. He was there.
Shout
for that,
out to the
you know
God West. Quote him all the time.
Dr. Katie Cannon was even there for that first
another
year
one.
There. You know what I'm saying? I ran into Gary Dorian, of course. Dr. Christopher
Blazers.
Morse, he was my advisor. You know what I mean?
Dr. Morse.
Man, I stumbled into Union at a time where I just so happened to meet people who were able to shape and mold me into a path that I knew I was looking for, but didn't understand where it was or what it was. You know what I'm saying? And they got me together, introduced me to it. And you know, some of the benefit was that I became a minister. You know, I was recruited into Abyssinian. You know, did an intern minister of youth position for a while. You know, eventually became a youth pastor, and you know, that was an experience too that was life changing. You know, working with Dr. Calvin Butts,
legend. He's an icon.
Legendary. So let me tell you, bro. By the time I left Union, I was a completely different human being.
Yeah.
I was a completely different man. You know, I went into Union. A God-fearing man. I left Union a God-fearing man who could tell you something about the Bible because I know something now. You know what I'm saying? I could tell you something theologically. I could tell you something dogmatically. I could tell you something from the standpoint of ethics. I could tell you something from the standpoint of religious studies. I could tell you something from the standpoint of just straight up philosophy, listening to Cornel West and what he had to say. Union changed my life, man. And I could also tell you something from the standpoint of a practitioner. You know, I became a minister. I became licensed. You know, Union changed my whole life, man. And there are so many things you can't replicate in order to create that same experience for somebody else. You know?
And you know, I'm glad, because we were talking off camera, and I tell people, as much as I wrestled with Union, because what does, you know, Israel mean, right? Wrestling with? We do it every day. So it's like I tell people, it's like that was it's like our stories are like mirror, you know. Except you probably better looking at me in the whole process. You feel me? Like, because it's love here, right? And it's like, yo, it's bugged out how I feel like for me also I can relate to that, because unlike our brother Derek, who went later in life, he said he was 40, because I'm pushing 40, my dude, and I still am figuring out, but my mind's on another level right now, you know. So maybe stepping into Union's door this time in my life, it would have been different, but the fact that, right, I don't know, maybe, but and I think that's why a lot, I also recall, like, there was a lot of folks too that later in life they went to Union, you know what I'm saying? And it's really deep, and it's like, but I think, like I said, it's such a special calling, and it shaped me so much. I learned a lot about myself, man. Like, you know, it's crazy you say Cone, because I always tell people this, man, real talk. My mom introduced me to God. Dr. Cone reintroduced me to God.
I like that. Yeah. That's what.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so I always say that
Yep.
as a fact, because for me, it's not also about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's never about us, yo.
Mm-hmm.
You're going deep into this. You know, we talked about Dr. West. He's always,
Yeah.
you know, he always preaches on like the exploring thyself. If you don't analyze yourself and go deeper and get lost in this information, man,
Yeah.
you'll never get to the ultimate divinity of
Yeah.
of thyself, of knowing
Right.
who you are, knowing thyself, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's so dope to hear that, because especially, you know, we're still kind of COVID-ish, right?
Yeah.
Right? And I have this conversation about COVID and faith, but I want to go a little bit deeper, more further, because then after Union, you did a PhD.
Yeah.
What was your focus on? Your work?
So my work deals with the relationship between economic justice and racial equality.
Yo, say that one more time.
So my work focuses on the relationship between economic justice and racial equality.
I always say, like, I think that's so important, because there's so many angles with this. A lot of what we talk about with Know Thyself, particularly with my entrepreneur family, but my social justice family, is the idea of spiritual economic empowerment. And I remember when I was doing my doctorate, I did about a year and a half of Kabbalah, to study Kabbalah, ancient Jewish mysticism. And I'll never forget how they really got into the spirituality of economics and what it means to exchange not just a piece of paper, but the energy that comes with each exchange. Because that dollar doesn't represent a piece of paper. That represents blood, sweat, and tears across every platform, be it holding down the church, having enough space for ballots, right? You know what I'm saying? All redlining in real estate, you know, school, or lack thereof resources. But let me shut up and let the professional, the God, speak. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
And more so on a practical level, yo.
Excellent. Yeah, man. I appreciate these questions, man. So if you remember, Cone's first work, Black Theology and Black Power.
What changed my life?
Changed my life too, man. As I began to do my research for my PhD, right? You know, I was at ILIF. I did the joint program at the University of Denver, the ILIF School of Theology, and I worked with Miguel de la Torre, and he had actually created an economic model of justice for Latinx communities, right? And me thinking, well, I'm interested in economic justice mainly because of all the things I saw growing up around racism. I saw racism as an economic injustice.
Super.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And we talked about that earlier in this. And so I was like, you know, black communities need that too. We need some economic models of racial justice too. And then I was like, wait a minute. Didn't we have that though? And so James Cone's first book, Black Theology, Black Power, right? The Black Power piece never got formulated, theologically speaking, into a model of ethics for black communities. Now, we did the Black Theology piece. I mean, we still do it, you know? I mean, so much so we got womanist correctives, necessary womanist correctives. We do Black Theology over and over again. But the Black Power piece, I felt, got lost in the conversation around what does God have to say about this, right? About identity, about his relationship to black people from the standpoint of black power. So when you go back and you look at what the Black Power movement really represented, it was about the self-determination economically and politically of black communities and all people around the world, right? So I said, that's going to be my entryway into this conversation about economic justice and black theology. But I did something a little different. I actually studied the Black Panther Party as the economic model of racial justice that we need to put in conversation today with activist armors of black churches and with other paradigms of ethics for different communities of color, like Latinx communities, for example. And so basically all I did, man, I looked at the black socialist principles, the philosophy and bedrock of the Black Panther Party, and I basically, I pulled out from that, because the point is not to just say, we're gonna just take what the Panthers did and repeat it today. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Culturally and historically speaking, the Panthers were really effective because they had the Vietnam War working in the background with them, right? And they also had the support of so many white allies and other allies who were not just white, really working it. You saw Judas and the Black Messiah.
That's the first thing,
right?
and that's facts. Because, that's the immediately what I was, R.I.P. Fred Hampton, R.I.P. Huey P. New and the Gods, because it's interesting that I'm glad they show the coalition and the bringing together, even if it meant bringing that underground economy together.
Right. But see,
what makes it any? Go ahead.
So that's where I was really trying to draw out a model, a paradigm for how we can start constructing ethics to do economic justice in black communities. So really looking at critiques of capitalism, right? Do we believe that capitalism can and will improve the lives and conditions of all people? Right? That's a legit question that I ask. I don't think so, right? I think when we look into history at the ways in which slavery and capitalism created what we know to be racism, we got to ask hard questions about emancipatory projects that are rooted in capitalism. You feel me?
Yeah.
What does it mean for black communities or any communities that are marginalized to own and control the means of production so that capital doesn't get extracted from their communities and put into other places, but they can control that capital and use it for whatever resources they want. And they could even pool it together and build something brand new, right? But the whole idea was saying the Panthers created an institution inside of capitalism that challenged capitalism, because they problematized this idea that you can own and control at the same time. You can own, control, and labor at the same time. They problematized that. They said, we're going to do that. We're not going to alienate, our products from who is in control of it. You feel me? And that was a smack right in the face of white people. That was a smack right in the face of that ruling elite. You know what I mean? That capitalist elite, because they were also willing to defend it. You feel me? So looking at all that, I said, we can put these ideas today in conversation with what we mean by racial justice, right? When we start thinking about how the pandemic really messed everybody up, man, financially. What would it have been if we already were doing some of the things that the Panthers had did in the past today, right? We probably could have got out in front of that. You feel me?
Yeah.
We didn't have to wait for the government handouts, or we didn't have to wait for some of the things that we're seeing. Even with the vaccines, you know what I'm saying? We got to wait in line, or everybody got to get it at a different time,
right?
Because some people are more important or less. I have no idea. I don't know what the logic is.
Right, exactly.
Right? But all I know is that the Panthers had free clinics. And everybody could walk up in there at any time of day and get what they needed because they were a human being. You feel me?
Josh, I wanna know, cause what happens when somebody would say, "Yo, but we have a history where people just hate, having a tough experience, recognizing self-haters." We saw what happened with Black Wall Street. We saw what happened in Seneca Village. We can start listing how anytime the black family started to come together, they would, because I always say, Dr. King, at the same time he was protesting, he was organizing the truck drivers, right? The garbage workers. So there was always a level of economic, but there's always been a level of resistance. I think now, and I want to hear from you with this, because this is very important, family, right? I talk a lot about entrepreneurship here. The entrepreneur spirit. I really do believe there's a spirituality to entrepreneurship, because once you start going into a journey of independence, economic independence, you start learning about thyself, because then you start asking yourself, what's more important, and why is this happening? And I think COVID exposed that much more expeditiously with a very short time constraint, because you really started to, as someone, the guy Professor Sanchez of the Temple of Hip Hop, shout out, said, we see our true colors, right? So I wanna know from you, because I really feel now when I think of like the God, the Wall Street trapper, who's helping a lot of people in the hood learn stocks, right? Trading. How we're starting to see a lot of a rise of entrepreneurs. But even though the COVID situation really made that difficult, because people that were depending on their side hustles to feed their entrepreneur stuff really got put to the side. But I don't want to talk just about the individual, because what we're talking about here is systemically and socially. Right, we need each other. Like, you know, it takes a village. How do we approach? How do we create a new Black Wall Street in 2021, yo?
Yeah, you know, I've thought a lot about that, man. You know, when I actually did some community organizing in Denver for 3 years. You know, a huge part of my motivation and drive to do that work was a vision for economic justice. You know, I worked with the BLM Denver chapter, and I was in charge of the economic justice vision for the group. So I created a proposal. We tried to carry it out, and when I would give presentations about, you know, what has worked in the past, right? You know, what can this kind of look like if we really make this real, this vision. You know, I would use examples like Black Wall Street, and what I found was in order for community, in order for the Black community, man, to really get with that, to really buy into that, it required a revolution of values in Black businesses, because when you're doing business, I mean, you're thinking about your bottom line, you're thinking about profit, right? But we're asking businesses within this model of thinking about Black Wall Street in a capitalist, you know, in a late modern sort of capitalist environment. We can't really do Black Wall Street the way it was done. To do that now, really what we would need to do, and I say this because segregation doesn't exist the way it did back then, right?
Facts, yeah.
So now what we really need is just the sort of cultural buy-in from Black business owners. You know what I'm saying? Given that we're not all in the same place, we're not all sort of sanctioned off into some you know, segregated area of the state or city or whatever, and you know, in a place like Denver, everybody's thinned out. You know, Black people are thinned out, so it's not even like we're all really close to each other. So to really get everybody on the same page, it required just pushing people to think about values differently. So, you know, in a business, we know that your income is what you're in business for.
Right.
But now we're asking you to, you know, incubate what you got for yourself so that you don't go under, but keep any other resources into a pool so that we can now collectively redistribute everything that we have as Black people to one another. We need to be a resource to one another. So how do we do that? You know, I know that you made money and you're a business and you have the right to do whatever you want with your money, but I'm asking you now, hold on to it, put it into this resource pool for Black communities here in Boston. I mean, in Denver. You know, that was an ask that I think a lot of businesses, if they're not with the vision, if they're not with the historical need for Black people to pool these resources together, if they're not with the idea that collectively we get free, right. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to get with it. They're just not. You know, they're going to worry about, you know, their bills and their families and the things that they got to do for themselves.
I've had so many conversations and colleagues who have talked to me about this, because when you talk about how money gets recirculated between different ethnic groups, I think the Jewish gets circulated almost like 17 times, and how Black culture of the aesthetics from the motherland has been reused, especially when it comes to music, which is the big one. We hear that a lot from the hip hop community. That power, that economic power that we actually do have. You know what I mean? And we're talking about trillions of dollars, like to the point where they say that our GDP alone surpasses, you know what I'm saying, we can be up there.
It's
and
about
what is it?
Several first world countries.
Correct. Facts. You know, within domestically, internally.
Like 8th or 9th or something.
It's bugged. And just what? California's GDP is like the 5th richest. If it was a country, it'd be like the 5th richest country in the world. And how many people from the diaspora are there? Right. So it's bugged out to me of how, because what you're talking about is like slicing the pie. Like, I'm gonna do for me, but I also want to do for the rest of the community in order for us to together build and continue to build, so that in the event that one of us fall, we have a crutch for each other to pick right up. Because that's the way to do it. Yo, I mean, I've seen people, you know, like when people like buy houses and stuff, or multi-family homes, like a bunch of them lived in there. You know, they each slice the pie up and then do it again and flip and flip and flip. But it takes the village and a common understanding to know like, this is the way that we can do this. So get out of your old values and old ways. And some of that's embedded in theology too, I think.
Oh, of course it is.
And I think some people get a pushback because then you start thinking of like the, what we call that, prosperity gospel situation that we always bring back, remember, right?
So, you know, I'm in Denver trying to create this vision. It all started from my understanding of black theology.
Correct.
It comes out of it was a direct outgrowth, because at the same time that I'm trying to build, you know, capacity build around this proposal, I'm writing my dissertation, you know, and in fact doing the work in BLM and sort of, you know, almost campaigning, bro.
I believe it,
to get with this vision. It helped restructure my dissertation. You know, I didn't fully understand how the big picture was going to look when I put, you know, the economic philosophy of the Black Panthers in conversation with black theology. I didn't know what that would look like until I started doing the work in BLM. And then I was like, oh, it can look like this. You know what I'm saying? If we just sort of, you know, reimagine what the Panthers did in a sort of 21st century model, knowing that we don't got the Vietnam War, we don't have a lot of allied support, but what we do have is a willingness to take control of resources, of capital, such that we just empower ourselves and make sure it stays that way until we want to do something else. I mean, we could sort of, you know, reimagine this thing and redo it. But bringing that to the people was like, what's black theology though? You know what I'm saying? What's that? Because what you're saying is true. I mean, the average person probably doesn't know about black theology. And they probably do know about prosperity. They are incentivized to make money, and they are taught to believe that's a reflection of God's blessing. You know what I'm saying? You know, capitalism does a number on the way we've internalized relationships. I mean, it doesn't actually speak to what we learn in Union, man, which is that, I mean, God is trying to bring all of us back into union with God. And capitalism is the farthest thing from that kind of model of human relationships. That we've done so much to rationalize it that we have lost the true essence almost of the gospel, bro, of who God is, of who we are in relationship to God. And to try and make people unlearn that in and of itself is a whole movement. That's what I learned doing this work, man. You know, starting with the premise that people are not going to know this is the best way to do it, and really capacity building around that first.
Josh, we all know Dr. Cohn's famous words: "You must find your voice."
Gotta find your voice.
Well, doing this work, the experiences up until this point, what's your voice telling you, man? What's the message you want to give out to the family out there?
That Jesus was a Black Panther. And God loves black people and all people. And we don't need to shy away from the revolutionary spirit of Jesus Christ. I think that's the one thing going to Union taught me, going to Iliff and DU taught me, you know, doing all my research on economic justice. You know, I do understand it to be a continuum, right? Because this is just what I believe. You know, other people might tell you, you know, we can find a way through with capitalism. You know, I push back against that, right? But I think we need everybody having these conversations to at least stick together, right? Because if we're thinking about liberation, none of us really know what that looks like. We just have a feeling, right? And that feeling is just an approximation of truth from our own perspectives. You feel me? And so it's really about coming together and attacking this thing from all angles. Because one of us might be right. You know what I'm saying? One of us might break through and be right, and then we all get free. But the idea is, you know, we don't need to be fighting. We don't need to be against one another. As long as we all want to liberate, you feel me? I think that we should stick together and just try to keep doing this work. But for me personally, I think my voice is very much one where I believe, you know, capitalism can and will not improve the lives and conditions of all people. You know, I do believe in the message of the Black Panthers, man. That you know, black people, man, we like a colony in this country. You know what I'm saying? And settler colonialism is our real enemy. And once we can identify that, then we can have a better understanding of what we mean by racism, how it's connected to economic injustice, and then what kind of behaviors, practices, and institutions we then need to create to reflect back to us, you know, how we're going to get free. Because if it's going to be the case where, you know, a ruling elite or an ownership class is alienating laborers and people who work every single day, you know, to make things happen and to keep this infrastructure going, if that's going to continue to be what it is, man, I just can't see liberation in that, man. Especially for black people, because we've always been doing that, and really we've been relegated to that because of racism.
And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting what?
Facts.
As we always do in the Know That Shelf podcast, is we invite guests to bring something out of their shelf, man. What you got for us?
Thank you, bro. You know, I brought this, man. You know, I know we're sitting here talking about alternatives to capitalism. So I brought my gold Cuban link chain. You know, it's something that's near and dear to me. It's jewelry. You know, in a capitalist world, this is, I mean, it's proverbial gold, but it's also gold. You know what I'm saying? In a capitalist world, this is everything, man. But it's everything to me because my father gave it to me. You know, this is an heirloom that he got from his dad, and he gave to me. And it's something that I used to wear around the hood in Roxbury all the time, no matter where I was at. I wore it at Union too. You know what I'm saying? When we first met, bro, I was out there with the fitted on, with the gold chain hanging over the crew neck. And, you know, I just keep it with me because it reminds me of who I am. You know what I'm saying? Not just, you know, somebody from Roxbury, but somebody who got a father and a grandfather, man, who got family heirlooms. You know, I want to pass this down to my my children if and when I have them one day.
That's a different conversation.
That's a different combo.
Well, that. You know, I always, and I think this is so important of when we talk about knowing thyself, knowing thyself from cradle to the grave, man. We always talked about that. Especially in the theological world of stripping the self, the kenosis, man. You know, cleansing of the self. But we have stuff that we hold dear to us, and I see that, you know, in the hood, everybody had to have the chain, man. The links is super important,
man.
You know. I'm so proud of you, man.
Hey, God bless you, bro. I'm proud of you too, man.
Yo, this is what I'm talking about. And real quick too, because like you said, another way that me and you are aligned is we both work with these young people, yo.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And that's,
you know,
that's a blessing.
And again, I wanna throw it out there. Same question, man. What's your message to the young people, my brother?
Thanks for that question. Hey, it's gonna be real cliche. It's gonna be cliche, but you know, the more I'm around young people, the more I am taken aback by how much they need to know this. Read your history, man. Read your history. You gotta read your history. You gotta read your history. It is the most necessary thing that you don't know about your identity. You gotta read your history. And there are so many things that we would know more about ourselves if we just read our history.
And you know, it's crazy. My mom asked me to talk at my grandmother's funeral, and I was honored. You know, and I said, It's like, I went to Union, right? Nobody knows that though, right? I think it's just when I talk to my young people, man, and I said this exactly, right? Because she told me, please talk to the young people when you're up there. This is for them, right? I always tell them to get lost.
Okay.
Get lost in the books. Get lost in your faith. Get lost, because I always, by getting lost, you find yourself, right? I kind of read somewhere that you got to pick up your cross, forget yourself, and So I think that's so important, because another gem that another God said was, I don't follow me, man. You got to create your own path,
Yeah.
But we have so many examples that could show us what didn't work and what works and what needs a little touch up. But young person, you're the next one, this is our time.
Yeah,
Josh.
for sure.
As we always do, because I don't want to preach. This is not me. I'm not a minister. This is, I'm so proud. My brother, I'm proud of you, man.
God bless you,
and
bro.
I love you, King. And
love you too, man.
No words. As we always do, we close with a quote. And this comes from an anonymous person. And it reads as such. Nah, no peeking. He peeking. We may seek God by our intellect, but we only can find him or her with our heart.
That's it.
Peace, family.
That was lit, man. I appreciate you, bro. Thank you, dog. Thank you for that, man.